Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today what I want to talk about are entry level to luxury and high luxury and exceptional watches. And it's sort of a very twisted tale in some ways because a lot of funny things have happened. What may have been an entry level at one time suddenly isn't anymore, or a new one comes along, or some really have two. So let's take a look at it. Now, the first one I want to start with is one I've probably mentioned a dozen times, so I won't spend a lot of time on it, is the Bulgari Octo Roma. Bulgari is owned by LVMH, and but the movement BVL was for Bulgari. 191 is sort of their own movement. Now, I'm not positive who makes it. LVMH owns La Fabrique des Temps, but I believe the BVL 199 may be made by a company called Calypso. Not positive on that, but it's pretty much identified as not a cheap movement, but sort of a good, solid, reliable movement. Anyway, 7,300. Now you say, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like entry level to me. It sounds like $7,000 I don't have. This is on luxury watches now. Some of them are lower than this, but that's sort of anything under 10,000 is very low, but some of them are above that. So let's take a look at it. And like I said, there's some strange twist and turn in this story. Now this next one is the Vacheron Constantin 56. Now this one is at 12,700. Again, not everybody's affordable, but compared to 20,000, it is. Now this has an interesting caliber. It's called a 1326. The base of it is a Cartier 1904. Okay, now why would they have a Cartier movement? Well, at one time when I had my first Vacheron Constantin overseas, it had a Girard-Perregaux base movement in it. Now the base here, the Cartier 1904, is a little different story because this was from a company called Valfleury, which is owned by Richemont, which owns Vacheron Constantin plus several other companies. And so they also own Cartier, they own Piaget and some other ones that can also use the same movement. Now, is this in-house or not? It's in a big house, namely Richemont. Hard to say. The 1326 is self-winding, automatic. It's got a power reserve of 48 hours. Um, the the Cartier 1904 architecture is a good base architecture, so we're not dealing with a junk kind of movement by any stretch of the imagination. And the other thing about it is that Vacheron Constantin takes whatever movement comes in and works it over to their specifications. Anyway, so it's not exactly the same as all of the other movement, but it is the thing I like about it is it was designed as an entry level, and almost literally half of what the next highest is. So it is it is a true entry level. Some companies don't even have that. I mean, some like I don't think Audemars Piguet, I don't think Patek Philippe have something like this, and I'm glad that Vacheron Constantin does. Okay, um, moving right along. The Another one that's become more recognized as very popular, Chopard Alpine Eagle 41. 41 stands for it's sort of 41 millimeters. It's got a 60-hour reserve. It's got a certified chronometer movement and a 4 hertz frequency. But it is an in-house Chopard movement. So this watch, now 14,800, again, it's not a bargain. But again, when the next up is in the 20s and then 30,000, it's more along those lines. Now, moving along, the next one is something that was a mix. So we're going to start with what's called the Santos de Cartier. This is by Cartier, of course. Medium. Now, the medium is 35 millimeters wide and 49 millimeters long. So you've got one that is this way is 41 and this way is 35.1. So it's somewhat of it's a square shape. But the way the lugs pull out and the bracelet fits and everything, it goes to 49 millimeters in the length of the case. Now this is on the medium one, 7,050. Okay. Now the other one is a large one. It's called a large Santos de Cartier. It's 7,750. Again, in this level of watches, this is considered entry level. So if you have a bigger wrist, this one is 47 millimeters long and 39.8 millimeters wide. So pretty much like this one I think is 40 millimeters. And so to give you an idea of that, again, this is an entry level. Now the green face one I used, I said they had the gator strap as well as the metal bracelet. Really like the bracelet on this one, but I also like the green gator strap going with a green dial. They didn't indicate one was more expensive than another. Usually the bracelet's more expensive. Who knows? The movement is a caliber 847 MC, no date. It's a 4 hertz caliber, 42-hour reserve. It's an automatic. Both watches use exactly the same caliber, so there's no difference in that either. Now, okay, this next one is going to be another entry level by the same brand, and it's going to be lower, but I'll try to explain why. I think the Santos is more of an entry level, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, and we get to the Cartier tank must, and let me tell you why. The thing that threw me off was the must. I think it was in the 70s or sometime. They came out with this line of Cartier watches called Must de Cartier, and they had a terrible reputation, and they deserved a terrible reputation. These guys who took it over at the time were, I don't know, they're almost like hustlers rather than really appreciate either the history or anything else about it. But I don't know why they're still using must in here. Anyway, it's not a must de Cartier, in case you had the same reaction that I did, like, what? The other thing is that it's only, again, remember we're talking about higher up here, $5,000. For an entry level, it has the same caliber, the caliber 847, except it has the date down there at 6 o'clock. It's difficult to see. One of the things, the arm on the 7, which is sort of inverted, says Cartier on one of the legs of that. I don't know why. I always thought that was very cool. It's automatic. It's a very historical watch. This called a tank because the two sides of it. Originally it was narrower than this, and from looking down on it, it looked very much like a World War I tank. So they called it the tank. There's a over there is a 1920. It's called the Tank Louis. So it's been around for a while. And anyway, $5,000 for a Cartier tank must. So if, okay, so why did you say a Santos is an introductory one? Well, like I said, the must threw me in the first place. I didn't want to introduce you to something that was somewhat junky. On the other hand, the Santos is more, to me, more of a modern watch. Even though I like the tank. So you got a choice of entries on this one. Now, this next one, we really go into another, I'll call it stratosphere, really. And this is the Streller Cerna. Now, Andreas Streller did something very, very interesting. First of all, this introductory level one is not introductory level, but entry level is 20,000 Swiss francs. And again, that's doesn't even begin to define affordable for very many people. But when you consider that Andreas Streller's other watches start about 58,000 and quickly go over 100,000, 20,000 sounds like a really good thing. And it's interesting what Streller did, I think. I think people like me, you look at $20,000 and, unless you win the lottery or something, but on the other hand, 100,000 looks like you got to win a couple lotteries and sell your house. So you end up with an interesting watch, I think. And what he did, he separated the web sites. On the one for Andreas Streller is one, and this one is called just Streller. So it's sort of like, okay, these guys are different. But at the same time, there's this is not a junk movement. He puts in this really a beautiful movement, gives the collector like me, at least anyway, a really good view of the movement with an open, we'll call it an open face rotor in it, 18 karat gold rotor, 21,600 semi-oscillation per hour. So this is for someone who wants to get into the stratosphere. This Andreas Streller, of course, is a member of AHCI and one of the top watchmakers, period. Anyway, then it has the, I believe, a titanium kind of engraving on the dial, and it's really really a very special watch. Okay, not cheap, but for Andreas Streller's, it is. And I know this sounds weird, but that's what it is. Okay. Now, this next one I'm going to take a look at is an interesting thing that some of the top watchmakers have done, and that's a collaboration. And so you end up with a more affordable watch. And again, here we're talking almost 30,000 Swiss francs, which is, almost $30,000. I have both Swiss francs and dollars down there. It should be Swiss francs, I think. So sorry about that. Anyway, this is a collaboration between Cartier and Schwartz Etienne. Schwartz Etienne makes really very good watches, and in fact, the caliber ASC 200 is one of their is a pure Schwartz Etienne caliber. One of the interesting things about the Schwartz Etienne caliber, you can see the little sort of indentation where they have the micro rotor and then where they have the barrel. Using that same base, they also have one that has two barrels and they're in parallel, and so that naturally is a real soft spot for me. Here you have some constant force mechanism. But in this one, you have a pretty 86-hour reserve and uh, a nice movement, but 30,000 Swiss francs. I'm pretty sure it's Swiss francs. Anyway, and then now the dial was done by Atelier Butenlanen. So this is another way that's sort of an entry level. And again, 30,000 bucks an entry level. Well, Cartier Butenlanen, his stuff starts up toward 100,000. So again, this is something that looks a little better than if you're coming down. It looks better than if you're going up. Now this next one is sort of an unusual kind of story, if you will. At one time, the F.P. Chronomet Blue was the entry level. It was different than the Chronomet Souverain in two ways. On the one hand, it was a little smaller. It was 39 millimeters instead of 40 millimeters. Instead of made out of gold or platinum, this one is a platinum version of F.P. Chronomet Souverain. It was made out of tantalum. So tantalum is very hard to work with and everything else, but the movement is the same movement. And so people loved the watch, 20,000, but it was 20,000 then. I think you could even probably pick up one for a little less than that if you did some negotiations. Boy, not anymore. They make about 100 of these a year, and there's a waiting list for years. So if somebody wants one, and then the 37,400 is the entry level. So what happened, I think what is an entry level at one time becomes like they're selling these things for over $100,000 on the pre-owned market. Some people bought them simply for investment, and once they get them, they turn around and sell them for 3 or 4 times what they paid for them. You know what I'm thinking, that Cerna by Streller, I wonder if in a few years people are going to look, oh gee, I wish I'd got one of those when they were quote only 20,000. Okay, now this final one, or ones I guess, I call the affordable stepchildren. They're not exactly collaborations. They're something else. They're basically watches with that a company has decided, well, there's so many people who want our watches, and we can't make a whole bunch of them because of the nature of the watches. This is with MB&F and with Groenfeld. And so I thought, well, what we'll do is we'll make a watch sort of for everybody, and not put in an expensive movement and try to keep the price down. Well, they've done it with these two, and it's sort of, you're not exactly getting into a higher horology, because the horology is for the MB&F is called the Mad Editions, and they're using a modified Miyota automatic movement, making a very interesting watch. And the interesting thing about that watch, the Mad Editions, is that you read the time on the side rather than on the dial. It's sort of very interesting. 3,125 Swiss francs. Now another one that came out recently is the Groen Oldenzaal, with the Groenfeld, are the parents of this. The first one is called the Groen Manuel 1. And so, and it's 2,150 euro. Again, both of these watches sold out very quickly, and I think the kind of finishing, the kind of work, and everything else that would go into a typical Groenfeld or MB&F you just can't mass produce them. They're just not done because everything, a lot of it is done by hand. It's not just takes time and it is expensive. And so when we come to buy them, they're we can't afford them. So anyway, so that's another way that I guess you can have a entry level is simply have these watches that are far more affordable and have some feature or some hint of their masters or their parent brand. Anyway, and there are other ones other than these, but I would really like to hear from you what you think is, or what you know, would be a good entry level watch or is an entry level watch. I really think for collectors, these are things that we need, things that are interesting and not wholly unaffordable. Let me know what you think. This is an opportunity to subscribe if you like. Until next time, this is Bill Sanders for Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection.